Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Magical Learning Podcast. This week we are back to normal in terms of we are recording on the Friday that you'll be hearing it, so that's pretty exciting. And I'm lucky enough to be joined by both Danette and Grahame, so I want to thank you both for being on the podcast. I'm going to start with Danette. How has your week been?
Yeah, my week's been really good, Jez. Had a couple of workshops. Yesterday we had a big lizard come and join us in the basin in the bathroom, and it was very friendly, so that was pretty cute. And other than that, it's been awesome. Yeah, so no, great week. Thanks, Jez. How's your week been?
Yeah, good. It's been the weather started to change in Melbourne here, which has been nice, and so I've been able to catch up with some people and just enjoy some warm weather and what comes with that, and also some pretty wild rain as well, but mostly good weather. So that's been good. And Grahame, how's your week been?
Hey, Jez. Yeah, look, my week's actually been good. I've had lots of opportunity to sort of hit the pause button, so it hasn't been as full on. Done a bit more reflection this week. Very excited about the fact that the latest reptilian visitors inside the house have legs. Very excited about that. Very grateful.
Me too.
I'm not sure. I have considered if with the RSPCA's sort of blessing, if we glued legs onto the legless lizards that people call brown snakes, would I feel more comfortable having them in the house? And the answer is no, really. I love them, but just not where I am. But it's been a good week, Jess. Thank you for asking.
No, that's all right. And if anyone is out there brave enough to try and glue legs onto a snake, best of luck to you.
But children, do not do this at home.
Yeah, legally we don't condone that behavior, but you can use it. You can imagine it in your mind. All right, well, fantastic, everybody. So this week we are talking about influences in your life, and once again, this is a great John Scollin topic. So I want to thank John Scollin for that one. All right, so I wanted to kick it off, and I might start with you today, Grahame. What are some common influences in our life that may affect us?
Damn you, John Scollin. It's actually a great topic. So, John, thanks for sharing this one with us. Influences in my life. Wow. Or influences in our life that can affect us. The more common ones, the more obvious ones are family, friends, peers, and the influences obviously change over time. So we potentially have more influences in our earlier days, going through school and that, because we generally interact with a lot more people. Outside of the people we spend time with, again, I think in part the influences really depend on what we pay attention to, or who we pay attention to. So some of the more obvious influences are things like social media, TV, news broadcasts, and that can both be positive and negative, I guess. And that 2% of our body mass between our ears. Our brain is also, I think, an influence in lots of respects in terms of how our thoughts can trigger emotions that lead us in a particular emotional or physiological state, whether we're aware of it or not. It's a very long answer. Good question.
I think it's a long answer because it's a broad topic, and that's why it's a good topic. So thanks for that, Grahame. And Danette, are there any? What are some common influences in our life that may affect us?
Yeah, so I'm just going to add to Grahame. So I thought of it in terms of internal influences, which Grahame pointed out, our thoughts then create our emotions, feelings, etc. So what we focus on with our brain obviously is something that influences us. But externally, Robin Sharma used to have the 3 Ps. I don't think he called it that, but it was the people in your life, the places that you go or might be living in, and also the pursuit. So what do you follow? Because obviously all of those impact you because they're part of your environment. So great question.
I think was that part of his joy is your GPS model?
Oh, that probably is, yes.
Yeah.
I knew it wasn't the 3 Ps. So yeah, joy is your GPS, which is actually a really great model.
Well, before I touch on mine, do you want to touch quickly on what joy is your GPS is for people that might be listening?
So if you think about your life and think about, we navigate our life, Robin's whole concept was use joy as your GPS. So focus on what's going to give you joy. So things like gratitude, helping others and stuff like that versus, the other way. So, yeah, it's a great model. But he talked about the 3 things that really influence us are people, places and pursuits.
Wow. All right, cool. That's a good little tidbit, a little bit of bonus for everybody. Fantastic. I wanted to also just quickly touch on something that both of you have been talking about, which is just what you consume sometimes can be what you are. And it doesn't have to be positive or negative. But I've found, especially in lockdown, that if I was mostly consuming one type of entertainment, which for me mostly was basketball, that it's, even though I feel like I'm thinking about other things, mostly at the end of the day, what I am thinking about is basketball, unfortunately. So I think for me, I try and when I notice that, when I look at my podcast feed and it's all basketball podcasts, and I look at my YouTube feed and it's all basketball videos, it's probably time for me to start looking at some other stuff just to mix that up, because I do know a lot about basketball, but I don't know how relevant that is all the time.
I love it.
In the words of the inimitable Messrs. Cheech and Chong, Jez, you have a basketball Jones.
That is definitely true.
Which, by the way, just to sort of clarify that for people who might be listening and thinking, where is this going? You love basketball so much, you are like a junkie.
I mean,
that's the definition. Sorry, just to clarify.
There we go. We've got a bunch of different influences so far. We've got Cheech and Chong. We've got Robin Sharma. If you're listening to this, you're taking on a lot. So that's great stuff. I might start with you for Danette for the next one, which is, what are some signs that your influences might not be serving you?
So great question. So I suppose if we want a rich life in that, you achieve what you're setting out to achieve and what's important to you, if it's taking you away a lot from what's important to you, from your goals, from your loved ones, things like that, then it's probably not so great. Also, if it's impacting your health, whether it's physical health or mental health in a not great way, then that's probably a sign that the influences you need to, as you said, sort of get a bit of a variety. Maybe it's just too focused in one particular way. And I think if you notice you're just not quite your usual self, that's probably another good indicator. So I don't watch news because what I know is, for me, it makes me feel not great because it just focuses on all the negative things, and there's a lot of positive things in the world. So that for me, and I know when I'm a little bit out of whack because I start scrolling social media. That's a pretty good indicator. Time to get back into some healthy things to do. So great question, Jez.
Yeah, awesome. Great answers there, Mum. You actually stole most of my answers there, so well done. Grahame, what are some signs your influences might not be serving you?
I think just to emphasize a couple of points that Danette made around, if you're not yourself, if you start to notice that your health, and again, this can be mental, it can be emotional, it can be physical, spiritual, but if you start to notice that your health is not what it was, there's always an aspect of sort of awareness in this, that you need to be aware that you're not where you once were. And I think the important thing around influences and thinking about, is it a good influence or not a good influence for me, is maybe comparing yourself with who you were a week ago or 2 days ago. Not so much comparing yourself with somebody else, but thinking about, well, am I in a better place than I was a week ago or a month ago or last year? And if not, what's going on? Hey, John, great to see you.
Howdy all. Sorry I'm late.
Yeah, no problem at all.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear John. For yesterday.
Happy birthday to you.
Pip.
Hooray!
Pip.
Hooray!
Happy birthday, John.
Thank you,
You can go
Colin.
now, John. I know you only turned up for
That's the
that.
only reason I turned up.
That's correct.
Well,
John,
John,
for life.
yeah. Well, John, I might even just check in on you. Obviously, congratulations, happy birthday, and how are you going?
Yeah, doing all right. It's been not a great week work-wise, but yeah, otherwise it's been great. Everything outside of work's good.
Awesome. Well, I've used your topic of influences in your life, and I thought I might just catch you up quickly. So, John, what are some signs that influences in your life might not be serving you?
Well, I guess for me, it's where do you think you want to be, or where do you think you should be at this point in time, and therefore, let's do an evaluation of your whole life, or different sections of your life. What's serving you? What's working for you? What's not working for you? And are you prepared to let those things that aren't working for you? Are you prepared to let go? And if you're not prepared to let go, then how are you going to get to where you want to be? That's going to be the challenge. But yeah, I think you've got to do a stock take on your life and go, what's working, what's not, what impact does all that have on me? And really, break down things to bite-sized chunks, because it might be something's not working for you, but it's only a portion of it, not the whole thing.
And I think that's a really good point. And sometimes that can be hard to distill. Sometimes, your strength is also your weakness in a lot of ways. And so you feel easy to rest on that, but it can also not serve you. One good example, actually, I think for me is I watched a video on social media and how it sort of utilizes dopamine. And as we know, it's a good way to sort of trigger dopamine pretty quickly. But I watched a video about talking about when you take your brain off it, kind of what happens. And it's not necessarily that you are getting more dopamine from your phone. It's that your receptors are becoming less receptive to dopamine. So that as you use it more, just generally find less things as interesting. But I think used in a healthy way, social media can be a great way to connect with people in a long distance way. It's just obviously it's built to addict you in a lot of ways. So you have to monitor that and make sure it's not a negative influence. All right. Well, it's great that we've got all three of you for the final question. This is a good one. And this is the one I really want to learn about. And I might even start with you, John, since you've dropped in. How can you improve your influences?
I guess it's have a look at what are you influencing? What are you trying to influence? So I think they're two very different things. So what are you trying to influence? What are you trying to make a difference in? And are you actually succeeding in that? And again, it comes back to that stock take of, and how are you going about that? Because you can be trying to drive and make an influence and not making a lick of difference anywhere, because it's just not the right medium, or the way you're going about it's not different. So are you prepared to change your habits? But what are you influencing? Well, that's a different thing again. And what are those things? Because if you can't name what you're influencing, or if you can't see what you're influencing, you're going to run into them time and time again until the universe decides that you've actually changed.
Yeah, that's a good one. I think that's a good theme from some of our previous podcasts, which is that if you don't change or you don't grow, the growing is going to happen. You just don't get to pick the course. So a good thing to remind ourselves of there. Grahame, I might ask you the same question. What are some ways you can improve your influence?
I loved John's sort of spin on that, because he came at it from a very different angle to where I was thinking. But if I go back to one of the points that Danette made earlier about not listening to the news, and I just want to acknowledge an amazing human being, Dr. James Rao. So we met James at a conference in Toronto, 8 years ago. And one of the things he shared then, so this is 2013, I think, was that he hadn't listened to the news or read the news since 1987 or something. It was an impressive number of years. And one of the things that I decided to do when we came home was just to implement that. So, it just went completely cold turkey. And if we are somewhere, with family, friends or somebody else, and they have the news on, I will try and find an opportunity as soon as possible just to leave the room. Everything's energy. If we get into the whole quantum physics of the world that we exist on, everything fundamentally is energy. So everything has an energy. Dr. Bruce Lipton's written some really cool books about the energy of food. So when we think about things that influence, it's not just what we take in through our brain, but it's also what we eat and drink, what we consume also influences our moods, our state, our mental health, our physical health. So I think going back to John's point before, probably the first step is to get some clarity about where you want to go. How do you want to turn up? Who do you want to be as a human being? And then the question after that is, well, are the things that are influencing you in your life at the moment helping you get there, or are they heading you in a different direction?
Definitely. And I think once you realize that, it's sort of it is that stock taking.
Clarity on that.
Yeah, go for it, John.
No, I just want to draw on Grahame's point that when you say don't watch the news, it's not that you become ignorant of what's happening in your world or the world around you. That's not what you're trying to say.
No, it's not, John, and thanks for picking up on that. I've had people say, well, how do you ever know what's going on? I remember having a conversation with somebody once about a federal election coming up in Australia, they were saying, well, we have to stay in touch with the news because otherwise how will I stay informed? And my response was, well, how do what makes you think that the information you're receiving via mainstream news media is the right information, or all of the information for that matter? And when it comes to staying up to date on major things that are happening around the world, unless you live in a cave, there's always somebody who wants to tell you. So it's not that we are ignorant, that we don't know what's going on. We're just a lot more deliberate about what we let in. So thanks, John.
Yeah, I forgot to mention there's this thing called COVID going around, guys. I don't know if you may have missed it.
Really?
When?
Is that coming for Christmas?
That's it.
Uninvited guest. Let's hope not.
Yeah. And Danette, I was going to ask you, how can you improve your influences?
So I love the word that Grahame used there, which came off the back of what John was saying, that thing of being deliberate about what you let in and what you don't let in. Another thing that Robin Sharma used to get us to do was to map out our ideal day, to sort of work out what was the things that were going to lift you up and make you feel good to, achieve what you want to achieve over your lifetime. The other thing, two main things: reflecting. So the more you reflect frequently, how am I feeling? Am I growing? Am I learning? That's going to give you some sense of whether influencing, is working well or not so much. The other one that we talk about so much is the whole bit about looking after yourself. So the self-care, doing gratitude, being self-compassionate, because it's really difficult to have great thoughts when you feel like rubbish. And it's, to John's point about, what are you going to influence? Well, if you're feeling rubbish, those around you are going to pick that up as well. So, so I think it's in order to have a really good life where you influence well, it's also making sure you look after yourself in order to serve others better.
And I think that's a good point as well. I think looking after yourself, because if you're not, then you're putting that burden on other people to kind of look after you in some ways. And so then that becomes harder for them to do. And so you become a bit more of a sort of energy vampire, I think is the phrase. I just wanted to talk about one thing, that if you're struggling, if you have your certain or set in certain ways and you're trying to work out, I kind of want to branch out of that. This is something that I've utilized a little bit, is that you can look for things that you already like in new places. I find that an easy way to start getting new influences is to look up a celebrity or a person that you find very interesting on a podcast, but just make sure it's not on a podcast you already listen to. And you're immediately going to get a new influence from that new host, or if there's other people in the podcast, you're going to get new influences. So you can still enjoy what you already like, but you're able to absorb it in a new framework. That can sometimes be a nice way to transition into a new sort of influence area.
I like that.
And I also wanted to mention something that I think comes back off what Grahame was talking about, how everything has a bit of energy to it. we're sort of helping develop some courses at the moment. And one thing that I'm looking at is in science, there's this new type of thinking called systems thinking, which is basically a good example is they're talking about chronic diseases. And they were saying that it used to be, the thinking was it's mostly diet and exercise that's really going to affect these things. But what they're now thinking is that there's a lot more factors, lifestyle, stress, all this other stuff that can impact it. And so for them, when they look at these problems, it's not just about how do we hit these marks, but it's looking at the broader life as a whole, the situation, the location, and then all of that feeds into this stuff. So I think, Grahame, exactly what you're talking about with energy, it's not just even the stuff that we think at the moment, it can be even more broad scale than that. So I think, everything that you can do to minorly adjust your life in the right way, I think is going to affect it in a really positive way. Thank you for all those answers so far. I might just get everyone's final thoughts as well. I might start with you, Danette. What are your final thoughts on influences in your life?
So we know through our discussions, and I think most of us know anyway, that we influence ourselves and we influence others. So I figure, you're only on the earth for a short period of time, so try and be positive. In the words of Gandhi, be the change you want to see in the world. So
awesome. Awesome. Thank you very much for that. Grahame, what are your final thoughts on influences in your life?
I think if you feel the influences in your life are not really serving you, but you're stuck in terms of, how do I fix that? What else is possible? And this sort of goes back to your comment in part, Jez, about trying something different. One of the things that make it hard for us to shift in how we show up on planet Earth is we don't know the right questions to ask ourselves that are going to trigger an insight that gets us to think, oh, I hadn't even thought of that. And we're often not going to get that question from people that we spend most of our time with. So it's like connecting with different people. If you're stuck and you're not really sure where to start is find somebody different and have a conversation with them. Get a coach, get a mentor. But find opportunities to maybe have different conversations with other people, because that might help trigger the questions that are also going to help you decide where you need to go in terms of influences.
That's a great tip. Talking to other people, I think that's a really good one. And John, final thoughts on influences in your life?
I think, as I said, I think you need to do a stock take, but if you're going to make changes, they don't have to be, it's not as if you have to throw the baby out with the bathwater or get rid of all your friends, who aren't serving you or whatever it is. But do something different, whatever that one thing is, and make one change so that you're getting a better response. And as Danette said, it's how you show up and how you influence yourself. How do you get out of bed in the morning? And if it's not a great way to be, what can you change to try and make that a little bit better? Because whatever you take out into the world, take out into the street, take out to the workplace, gets projected and influences others.
Yep.
And likewise, they influence you. But I think you've got to start with yourself. Look at yourself and then start making those changes, and make small changes slowly so that you become comfortable with change. And I think if you try and change too much too quickly, people are going to go, I can't do that. Got to go back to what I was. Whereas if you make a small change now, and then once that becomes comfortable, make another small change, over a period of time, the influences in your life do change.
Yeah, great. Love it.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank everybody so much. What a great episode. I've really loved it, and I'm glad we got to have you on, John, just in your birthday week. So that's been nice as well.
Is it birthday week or birthday month, John?
Oh, look, I'm happy with a week. Don't want to be greedy.
Well, I want to thank all of you for being on. It's been a really, really good episode. I'm definitely going to have a listen back to it later and enjoy and pick up on some of these different answers. But I want to thank everybody. I also wanted to mention that if you listen to this on Spotify, you do get a little sneak peek of what next week's episode is going to be, and you can answer any questions that you have about that, or you can pose some questions to us. So go on Spotify if you want to have a listen, and you can communicate with us. So that's pretty exciting. Otherwise, I want to thank Danette, John, and Grahame for being on the podcast. It's been awesome. So thank you all very much.
Thanks so much,
Thanks,
Jez.
John.
Thanks everyone
Thanks,
else.
John.
And have a magical week, everybody.
Yes. Thank you.